Welcome to the uLead podcast, brought to you by the Council for School Leadership of the Alberta Teachers Association. In this episode, we bring you a breakout session from uLead 2024 called You Don't Need a Title to Be a Leader. You'll hear Shan Jorgenson-Adam and Dr. Rita Marler speak about how educational leadership is different from non-educational leadership roles because student success is at the core. They ask participants to reimagine their leadership skills and abilities and support them in identifying and cultivating these skills in others with the ultimate purpose of ensuring success for all students. Shan Jorgenson-Adam has been an educator for over 30 years, working in a variety of educational roles: teacher, school administrator, division principal, director, assistant, and deputy superintendent in both British Columbia and Alberta. Dr. Rita Marler has worked in K-12 public education for over 30 years in central Alberta. Rita's passion is instructional leadership, and her doctoral work focused on the instructional leadership role of the assistant principal. As superintendent for 9 years, Rita's visionary leadership and relational approach paved the way for a collaborative culture that created connections amongst administrators and schools across her school division. Here is You Don't Need a Title to Be a Leader.
First thing, I came in here this morning to set up, and I found this on the floor. And so it said, stay positive. So I don't know if this was karma or something, but we're going to try and make sure that this is a positive presentation. So we are JAM Consulting. My name's Shan Jorgenson-Adam. My hair was a little bit different in the picture on the screen. I am a retired deputy superintendent from a central Alberta school division called Battle River School Division. I retired in July, but I wasn't ready to give up this profession. And so I talked to my friend who's going to be introducing herself, Rita, and said, how serious were you when you were joking about us going into consulting? And she said, I was really serious. And I said, okay, well then let's do it. And so we just took really a blind step forward and formed a company. I was blessed because my son-in-law is in web design, so he helped us put our website together. And then it was kind of like, well, where are we going to go from here? And where we decided to go was leadership development. We are very passionate and really agree with both speakers who presented at the keynotes that being a leader in a building makes a difference. But we also know that you don't need a title to do the work. I've been in education for upwards of 34 years. I started my career actually in British Columbia in a small northern community called Fort Nelson, and then moved into the Okanagan, Kelowna, Armstrong area. Finished as a principal in Revelstoke, British Columbia. If you like skiing, this is just a little, another great place to go and ski. And then I came to Alberta, and my last division was Battle River School Division as deputy superintendent. I oversaw all of the learning portfolio and the inclusion portfolio, and then all other duties as assigned. And so I'm going to pass the mic over to Rita now, and she's going to introduce herself.
So I'm Dr. Rita Marler. I was the superintendent of Battle River School Division. My journey there was a lot different than Shan's. I just worked through my division and up. So started as a teacher in different schools within our authority. I like to move around, though, because I got bored after a few years and I wanted to see how other people did things. So I always requested to transfer at various times, and then moved into school admin and then had a very unusual step to the superintendency. I went from being a district principal for 3 months to deputy superintendent, and 2 months later I was acting superintendent, and 4 months after that I was superintendent. Not a path that I would recommend, but that's just where we were as a division, and we needed someone who knew the history and knew the people to get us out of kind of a funk. So anyway, after 9 years as superintendent, I did tap Shan on the shoulder and said, I think it's time. I'm kind of done with the politics. And we had a lot of fun in schools. And as district leaders, we were in our schools all the time. So we never lost touch. We were there working elbow to elbow with our school leaders. And so we've decided to carry that on, as Shan said. And so we're here to tell you that you can lead from any level. We did as teachers within our schools without titles. And so that's kind of the journey we'd like to take you through today.
So today we're just going to look and have an activity where we look at what is leadership, talk about some leadership skills. It's not an exhaustive list. I'm sure we've missed some, but some of the ones that really have stood out to us in our experience and now in the work that we're doing. And then we're going to give you some time to reflect and think about next steps for yourself. And we'll have a wrap up with the opportunity to ask any questions. I'm going to be really honest with you. We've presented at uLead 2 times before. Both times were on a research project that we were doing regarding leadership. Our audience probably had about 20 people in it. And of those 20, 18 worked for us. And then, so Rita and I are going, oh, what do you think? Well, probably maybe, 20, 30 people. Oh, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. And so, okay, well, let's do this quote activity. So we're cutting out quotes for, that many people. And then we went into the scheduler and we went, oh my gosh, it says we're going to have over 100 people in our session. So last night we were madly writing out quotes. We changed the activity a little bit because our handwriting was getting a little messy. Not saying that there was any wine involved in that. And the other thing is then Corey said to us, oh, do you mind being part of a podcast? So here we are with a room full of people and we're going to be maybe part of a podcast. So I'm just going to tell you, I'm a little bit nervous. Because usually the work that we're doing is we're sitting elbow to elbow, and the most people we have in the room is the 4 people on the admin team. So this is big scale for me. So I'm kind of feeling a little bit like a Baruti or a Kale right now. So what is leadership? When we were this quote has always really stood out for me, and it's Warren Bennis quote, and it said, the most dangerous leadership myth is that leaders are born, that there is a genetic factor to leadership. This myth asserts that people simply either have certain charismatic qualities or not. That's nonsense. In fact, the opposite is true. Leaders are made rather than born. And I think this actually speaks to a lot of what Baruti was saying too. It's that whole reflection piece. It's the big piece of having that vision, that dream. What is it that you want to achieve? And we're not going to be talking about it today, but I can tell you, I did a lot of work with student leadership, and they are the same way. If they have a dream and they're working towards achieving that dream, they can pretty much do anything possible.
So this is where we changed it up a little bit. So we have 3 quotations on your tables, and we would ask that you, as a group, read through them and choose one that resonates the most. And it might be something personal to you. It may have been something that you heard from one of the keynotes or your other sessions so far. And then once we've given you a few minutes to do that, then Shan will bring us back together to wrap that piece up. So there, some are typed. Those are the ones we prepared ahead. And the ones that are squiggly handwriting we did last night. So there is an overlap because we didn't go searching for a whole bunch of new ones. So be prepared just in case another group shares one that you guys chosen. It might not be bad to have a backup.
I heard groups talking about their positions. I heard groups talking about their quotes. Hopefully everyone had a chance to spend a little time discussing their leadership quote. And I'm looking for volunteers to share key points from their table discussion and their quote.
The quote for our table is, great leaders don't set out to be a leader. They set out to make a difference. It's never about the role. It's always about the goal. And it was Lisa Heisha that the quote was from. At our table, we had a superintendent, principal, deputy principals, and teachers, which was great. And we talked about the fact that a leader doesn't have to be that person out there with that name and that title, that they can be the quietest person, can be the person that is not leading from the front by standing up the front, but by being organised in the background and empowering other people and empowering our students to be the people that they believe they can be. So is that about? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Kia ora, everybody. We're three Kiwis over here. So we chose to lead people, walk beside them. As for the best leaders, the people do not notice their existence. When the best leaders' work is done, the people say, we did it ourselves. So we just talked about when you get to that end point or you achieve the impossible, then the team feels like they've done it all together, and it's not somebody with a big stick whipping them to get there. That was actually their idea. I kind of liken it a little bit to how we manage our husbands. It's always their idea, but you've planted that seed for a long time and you're happy to acknowledge that for them. Am I right? Okay.
Kia ora, from New Zealand, Gary from New Zealand. Our quote is, leadership is not a person or a position. It's a complex moral relationship between people based on trust, obligation, commitment, emotion, and a shared vision of the good. From Julia Ciula, who's an author and educator. I suppose that was probably the better of the three quotes we had on our table. We thought it was a more holistic look at what leadership's all about as far as our three quotes go. And yeah, that's pretty much it, really.
They said someone from Canada. So, greetings. I'm from just outside of Edmonton, not too far. But interestingly enough, we have a quote from a Kiwi. One of the criticisms I've faced over the years that I'm not aggressive enough or assertive enough, or maybe somehow because I'm empathetic, it means I'm weak. I totally rebel against that. I refuse to believe that you cannot be both compassionate and strong. From Jacinda Ardern. And I talked with our group about one of the books that I read this last summer called Compassionate Leadership. And one of the chapters I read, we often go to leadership conferences, and one of the things you always talk about is what style of a leader are you? What kind of a leader are you? And I remember always going around saying, I'm an empathetic leader. I lead with empathy. And I've been told that. And I remember reading the book, and it had a chapter about empathy, of course, and about how it can't just be that sole leadership style. And the quote I love from the book is that you need to let empathy spark compassion.
Thank you. And this table.
Kia ora, everyone. My name's Nathan. I'm obviously from New Zealand as well. Come from a little, not a little town. It is a little compared to Canadian towns, but Wellington. So our quote was, it's okay to admit what you don't know. It's okay to ask for help. And it's more than okay to listen to the people you lead. In fact, it's essential. And that was from Mary Barra. And we basically just talked about, we totally think it's okay to admit what you don't know. It builds relationships with staff. It builds a culture of problem solvers within your school. It allows others to lead, and you don't need to know everything as a leader. And we feel that it's really essential to listen to the people that you lead as well. And I think that was echoed in the first keynote yesterday when he talked a lot about listening and taking action on some of those things that people are telling you about your school and your leadership and that sort of thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
The one that I leaned towards was by Robin Sharma. He's a Canadian author. He wrote The Everyday Hero, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, The 5 a.m. Club, which I have a copy of, but I'm not going to read because I'm not getting up at 5 a.m. But we have leadership is not about a title or a designation. It's about impact, influence, and inspiration. Impact involves getting results. Influence is about the spreading of the passion that you have for your work, and you have to inspire teammates and customers. So that kind of went back to today's keynote, and also kind of I think that's like your main style. And when you have that, you have your team built kind of like this table over here, where they feel like a part of the process, not being done to, but done with. And so that's an important piece of leadership. And when you have that, don't be afraid to make decisions. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. So in order to live that, you have to have your team with the trust and that grace being offered. So they all fit together on our table. It's kind of what, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Actually, one of the books that inspired this presentation was by Robin Sharma, and it's called The Leader Without a Title. It's one of his newer books. And that book really spoke to me because the people in the book weren't leaders with titles, but they were leaders in their field of work, because their belief was that if you do your best at whatever you do and love what you do, you can have an impact. Yes, this table.
Hello, I am also a Canadian. If you couldn't tell by my non-accent. We also had the same quote from the Ministry of Magic in New Zealand that talked about the idea that you can be compassionate and strong. And we talked about this idea of assertiveness not having to be a negative thing. So you can be clear and concise, but you can be kind. So you need to make sure that you still always remember that there's a human behind whoever you're speaking to. And so we can have expectations, we can have clear expectations, but there's also always like a humanity that needs to be addressed. So you're welcome.
Thank you.
Kia ora, everyone. I'm Rachel from New Zealand. We really don't mean to take over your conference, but sorry, not sorry. Thank you for welcoming us and making us feel at home in this beautiful location. Just as a bit of background to that, some of you are probably wondering how our schools can afford to send us over here. It's not something normal that we do, or it certainly isn't in a school my size with only 60 children and 3 teachers. But in our last pay negotiations, which happen every 2 to 3 years, we were given a $6,000 professional coaching and wellbeing fund for the principal to spend on professional development and wellbeing, and for the next 2 years. So most of us, you can see, spent it coming to Canada. Yeah, we probably won't get it again, so we're making the most of it. And this is the coaching part, and the wellbeing part is everything beyond the conference. For myself and a good friend of mine, we're doing a road trip back over to Vancouver over the next 10 days, so can't wait for that as well. We spoke about the Jacinda Ardern quote and how it can be possibly a little bit more difficult for women leaders to not come across as aggressive if they are assertive and loud. But also if they're not loud or extroverted, I guess is the word, they can often be seen as weak. So, but the quote that hasn't been mentioned so far, I'll read. A leader takes people where they want to go. A great leader takes people where they don't necessarily want to go but ought to be. Rosalind Carter. And we had a quick discussion about that, but we mainly talked about the other 2 that have already been mentioned. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kia ora. Just for something really different, another Kiwi in the room. Last time I had a microphone, it was karaoke. So anyone who wants to join in, that's great leadership. Our lovely table over here, I'm joined by the Iceland contingent, woohoo, and our lone Canadian from Alberta, so that's nice and local. And we have at our table, like many of you, teacher, vice principals, and a director. Is it called? We don't really have directors. We do have a director in New Zealand, but nobody really likes him. So it's like, but I like that one. He's nice. He's good. We won't talk about that. we had lots of quotes and we chose this one because it was the shortest. The ability to learn is the most important quality a leader can have. And that's from Padmasree Warrior. Or is that a Padmasree Warrior? Yeah. Thank you. And we just talked about basically we're all learners, we're always learners, and we're lifelong learners. And if you're not learning, you're not moving forward. If you're not moving forward, you're going backwards. So learning is lifelong. Simple. Get up.
Thank you. Yeah, I won't sing. When I taught elementary, the kids used to say to me, Miss Jorgensen, how come all the songs sound the same? I only know one tune and it's not very good. I already did this table. We'll go to this back table.
I'm a little bit scared to stand up and talk because so many Kiwis are here today as everybody's going. Our quote's really simple. Stephen Covey, what you do has far greater impact than what you say. And you've got to walk the talk. So if you speak it, you have to walk it as well, quite simply.
Thank you. This group.
Welcome. We're a very homogeneous group, mostly from Alberta. But if you know Alberta, you know that probably most of us were born in Saskatchewan then. I don't know, but that's just how it goes. Just a little bit of trivia for those that may not be from Alberta, that we're 85% Saskatchewanian. So our quotes that we sort of, we liked all the quotes because obviously you can relate to almost anything that you see. We're a people of metaphor, aren't we? So that we can relate to almost anything. But the one that we came to was become the kind of leader that people would follow voluntarily, even if you had no title or position. Because sort of, I think what probably brought many people in was sort of the name of the title of this, is that there's leaders in every classroom, down every hallway, in every room in your building, and to be able to harness that and to make sure that you're part of it, leading alongside, walking alongside, is more important than what some, the most destructive leaders, which are the ones that are simply looking for power.
Thank you. This group.
All right. Good afternoon. We are a table of Canadians, two from New Brunswick, which is the far end of the country, and I'm from Alberta, though originally from BC. Our quote we chose, pretty simple one from Andrew Carnegie: "No man will make a great leader who wants to do it all himself or to get all the credit for doing it." And we talked about the importance of the strengths of your team and the teachers in the building and using those. And that's pretty much it. Yeah. Working as a team. That was it. The importance of teamwork.
We're a small group here of 3 Albertans. The quote we picked, I guess, I'll explain why I say I guess in a second. "Leadership should be more participative than directive, more enabling than performing." That's Mary P. Poole. We didn't have any quotes on our table to begin with. We have 2 administrative members and a teacher at our table. The 2 administrative members were happy to just sit here and stare at each other. But the teacher jumped up and went and found some quotes, and we didn't actually talk about the quotes, but we talked amongst each other. And so the leader of this table clearly is not the technical administrator. So thank you.
Another New Zealander, I did offer to my Canadian colleagues to share, but they're feeling outnumbered. I said we didn't come to a conference on the other side of the world to listen to each other, but here we are. Our quote was, "Leadership is an action, not a position." So sort of talked about, of course, that you can be appointed to a position of leadership, but that's not what really matters. It's what you do with it. Likewise, you may not be appointed to a position of leadership, yet be a remarkable leader.
Thank you so much. And I'm not going to lie, us Canadians love hearing your accents. So we're happy to have you come to a conference and work more than you planned. Thank you for joining us in that. One of the things I do strongly believe as an educator is the people who should go home most tired at night is the students. And so as many things as you can plan that they oversee and are involved in and working hard on, the better. And so today you were our students.
So I'm just going to take you through a few of the strong leadership characteristics that Shan and I identified. That's certainly not an exhaustive list, as you would know, but through our experience in working in schools for 35 years each, and also through the research that we've done and read, these certainly are some of the key ones. So integrity is key if you're going to lead anyone, from students on, your peers, whatever. So I always told my administrators that I kind of had a creed that I adhered to. And so some of you may be familiar with the 4 Agreements. Ruiz is the author of that. It's something that I read and it really resonated with me, that in education, so often we take everything personally, and that's one of his agreements, is not to take things personally. People attack when they're hurting, right? And we have to remember that in dealing with parents and dealing with colleagues. There's something underlying. It's not you that they're attacking. They're just trying to express things. And another agreement there is really being true to your word. And so that is integral, because if people can't believe what you say, then you have no credence, right? So integrity is huge. Being a lifelong learner, we've heard that earlier, but we're continuously. Shan and I, well, she's the most voracious reader I've ever read in my life or met in my life. So I still have probably a stack of books this high to kind of catch up. When I did my doctorate, I read so much that I couldn't even look at a book for 6 months, but Shan just kept on reading. And so everything that we did, certainly even as classroom teachers, was based on good research on what's best practice. It's important to keep up with that and to lead the way. You can do that in your classroom. You can do that as a system leader, a principal, whatever it is. Communication is key, and communication is not just you providing information. It's also a two-way piece. You need to be listening, right? You need to hear what people are saying. So this is just something that I had no idea I did this when I was a classroom teacher. There was a brand new teacher down the hall. Apparently, I listened and counseled her. I don't remember. But several years later, when I became superintendent, she was a school council chair. And she came up to me and said, "I still have the card you wrote me when I was a beginning teacher 25 years ago." I was shocked because I didn't remember writing the card. But it's those little things that you do to listen to people matter. And so Shan and I met with our administrators every fall individually. They could sign up to speak with her or me. And we listened to them. What's going well? What should we do differently? What do we need to bring in? What should we stop doing? And we listened. And then we took that back to them and said, "This is what you told us. This is what we're doing as a result of that." And I also met with my administrators every January to talk about where they wanted to go in their career. And those were just private meetings. They'd sign up to come see me. I just blocked my calendar off so that I could listen to them, because everybody has a story. Everybody has something going on in their life. Yes? We had 20 traditional schools and 10 Hutterite schools. So I don't know if you're familiar with Hutterites. Yeah. So it was really important. So we did that for principals and assistant principals, because when I had been an assistant principal, stuff was happening in my life. So I had eye surgery, lost peripheral vision in my right eye. And a week later, our family home burned. And during that time, my mother-in-law was dying of cancer. And my superintendent called me and transferred me in that same window. So story is important, right? And I don't regret the move. It was good for me. I would have become superintendent had I not made that move. So we don't always know what to be grateful for at the time, but it's important to know what's going on in your people's lives. whether they're your colleagues, people who work side by side, or your staff. Very important, right? So, and part of that is that empathetic piece. You need to listen. You have to move forward. And it may be that then you provide choice to people, right? Relational just goes without, right? We have to do the work that we have to do, but we have to do it and build relationships at the time. So many times you'll hear leaders say, well, I need to develop relationships first. Well, if you read Vivian Robinson, right, it happens as you do the work. You've got to show that you're doing the work and you build those effective relationships while you do that. So vision, we've certainly heard that from Broody this morning, how important it is. And vision is something that seems unattainable, but you have to know where you're going. You have to know what you're aspiring to do, whether that's in the classroom, whether that's as the principal who's hopefully in classrooms, as Broody spoke to, and us in division offices. We need to be in schools because that's where the work is happening. Collaboration key, right? You collaborate with your neighbors. The mentorship that you get from others. Believe me, when I was first a vice principal, I had a principal he mentored me, but not in how to be a principal. I learned how not to do things. So you can get mentorship in many different ways. It's not always a positive thing. It's about reaching out, trying things, and then discerning whether or not they're valuable, right? Because not everybody is effective at what they do. And that's okay. You can still learn from them, right? I learn from people all the time. One person that I mentored is at our table here, Mavis, who's doing a presentation later. She mentored me as well. I was her mentor when she became a new superintendent. But I learned as much from Mavis as she did from me. It's a mutual, it's collaborative, and the more that you reach out and help those around you, and if you're leading from your classroom because you are a good teacher, because you're willing to try new things that are best for kids, your colleagues start to notice. And we've seen that, we've read it, we've heard it. When you make a difference, the culture in your building changes. And it doesn't matter at what level you're at. Because people aspire to be better, they truly do. But if you're the one who's reflecting, you're thinking about what you've done, you're sharing. Don't be afraid to share when you're doing something good, because it can spark others to move forward. So those are just a few.
So just for our friends outside of Canada, and you may have heard of this before, in Alberta we have what's called the quality standards. So there's a teacher quality standard, a leadership quality standard, and a superintendent leadership quality standard. And all of those standards are used to supervise and evaluate all of those levels of staff. There's a through line. They all continue. Everything that's in each of them continues. We really don't get heavily into the leadership aspects until we reach the LQS. But there's still components in the TQS that speak to doing your best, supporting your colleagues. Those are all available online. Currently, Rita and I are developing a course for the College of Alberta School Superintendents on providing instructional leadership. And what does that look like at a central office level? And so we were very excited to hear Kale's presentation yesterday, because it was like, oh yeah, this fits with what does it look like, sound like, feel like when you're in a leadership position and supporting others to grow in their instructional in their instruction. With the SLQS, the ones that aren't on here on this list, but are part of the quality standards, speak to governance and community relations and all of those things. So these are just the standards that speak to the leadership aspects. And with the superintendent leadership quality standard, we actually just in August developed a course on being the lead learner. And Broody's presentation really resonated with me this morning after developing that course, because as a lead learner, we do need to be a reflective practitioner. It's funny, years ago, I had my first student teacher, And it was so exciting. I felt like an imposter, the imposter syndrome that Kale was talking about, because I wasn't sure I had enough experience yet. But my principal said, "Oh, you should take on a student teacher." And so I took her on, but she was the why girl. Everything was, why did you do it this way? Why are you doing that? And I had to really start reflecting on my practice. And sometimes, you know what? I didn't have a very good answer for the why. And so then I had to rethink, well, is this something I'm doing just because I love, dinosaurs? Or is this something I'm doing because it's truly going to have an impact on my students' learning? So these are our quality standards. They do guide the leadership work that we do as professionals in the province of Alberta. And just an interesting note for some of you outside of Alberta, the Superintendents Association in Alberta was just named a regulated professional organization. And so that's why we're developing coursework, because now they'll be required to get so many credits a year towards this standard to prove that they're continuing to learn and grow in their roles as leaders. So again, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the developing leadership skills that Rita and I have used and are currently using. We are working right now with some divisions in Alberta coaching school-based administrators and supporting them in the work that they're doing. A huge focus on instructional leadership, but also on school culture. And so when we were working with our principals in our division, mentorship was huge, and mentorship from a central office person was a part of that. So I had principals that I was responsible for. I made sure I was going out into their schools on a regular basis, talking to them, asking them about their work. We even went on classroom walkthroughs with them and debriefed with them afterwards on how are you going to discuss with your teachers what you saw so that you can support them to grow instructionally. Self-reflection, huge. Networking. One of the things that networking is hugely important. But I think that we have to always be really careful that when we're networking with others, that we don't get ourselves stuck in groupthink. I think that we need to ensure that when we're networking with others, those other people are challenging us to grow and learn in whatever leadership role we're in. Professional learning, huge. I'm very happy to see that a lot of the professional learning that's happening now in not only Alberta, but in our country is not just the one shot. You're popping in, you're going home, you're putting the handouts or, you don't access the slide, so that's available afterwards. But that they have a theme, that one session builds on another, that you can talk to your colleagues about it and reflect on it and actually go home and use some of your learning to further your practice. Reading, as Rita said, I'm a voracious reader. I just ordered Kale's book yesterday because I haven't read it yet, so that'll be waiting for me on my steps, or maybe my daughter will bring it into the house if she notices it's laying there for me to begin reading. There's formal education. There's shadowing. We did a cool thing with our leaders. The research project that we've presented on before was actually for all division leaders. So we had our facilities director involved, we had our technology director involved, and we actually had leadership positions shadow each other that didn't commonly see each other doing their work. So for example, one of our school principals shadowed our facilities director for the day, and then vice versa. And it was really cool to do the debrief with them because, the facilities director was saying, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that's how a principal's day went." And the principal was saying, "Wow, I didn't know that was all of the things that were included in our facilities director role." The other reason why we did that is because we really wanted all of our leaders in our division to understand that we were all there for kids and that all of our work was connected to what would be best for kids. And then volunteering, one of the ways to build leadership skills is to volunteer with outside organizations, as Brody spoke to this morning in his talk, coaching, those types of things. I think, too, is just understanding that high expectations are so important and that you collaborate with your colleagues and others to further develop yourself. And I think another reason why we chose to do this presentation, and I know that none of this is earth-shattering for you, it's hopefully affirming, and maybe there's a few things that you hear from our stories that you think, hey, I wouldn't mind trying that in my school or my division. And now I've totally lost my train. Just that idea that there's leaders at all levels. And like Kale said, we're not seeing as many people step up to apply for leadership positions because they're seeing the work that sometimes is really hard work. But, and as Rita said too, it doesn't mean just because you see your principal or your superintendent even doing the job a certain way, it doesn't mean that that's the way you're going to do the job. And in fact, like Rita said, one of her principals, she actually learned from him what she didn't want to do in that role. And that's important too, and that's a piece of the reflection, right? Where you're watching, you're going back and you're thinking about, did this person really make a difference for kids? So we've basically talked for a while now, and you had an opportunity already to speak with people at your table. But what are your next steps as far as your leadership journey goes? After you walk out of here on Tuesday after the last session, what are your next steps? What are some things upon reflection, even so far in your learning, are you going to go back and address in your own leadership journey? So we're going to give you time to either personally reflect on that and write some of your thoughts down on in the book or the paper that you have with you, or if you so desire to just chat with the people at your table about it. And we'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes to do that, and then we'll just come back together quickly for a wrap up. Have a great time at uLead. It certainly is a wonderful conference and just a beautiful environment to be in. So enjoy.
That's it for this edition of the uLead podcast. For more information on the Council for School Leadership, please visit our website at atacsl.ca.